Imagine climbing the Acropolis in the 5th century BC. You're not going just to a temple, you're stepping onto the most powerful stage Athens ever built to tell the world who it is. The Parthenon is born in a very specific political moment, the age of Pericles and the great building program on the Acropolis, when Athens wants to turn a military victory and a defensive alliance into stable leadership, cultural prestige, and internal consensus. Construction begins in 447 BCE, and the building is essentially completed by 432 BCE, at the height of Athens' imperial era. Here's the first key point. Yes, the Parthenon is religion, but it's also a politics made sacred. In the Greek world, and especially in Athens, civic worship is not separate from the state. Rituals, festivals, offerings, and sacred spaces are tools through which the city defines identity, hierarchy, and shared values. Dedicating the temple to Athena Parthenos means tying divine protection to the legitimacy of the polis. The goddess is not only worshipped, she is also the official symbol of the city and its historical mission. Then there's power in its most concrete form: money, alliances, control. After the Persian Wars, the Delian League is formed as a coalition against the Persian threat, but over time the balance shifts, more and more cities contribute tribute in cash, and Athens becomes the decision-making center. The decisive step is the transfer of the League's treasury to Athens in 454 BCE, an intensely symbolic act that makes visible who truly rules. In that context, a building like the Parthenon isn't a luxury, it's a geopolitical statement carved into the landscape. From afar, the Pentelic marble glowing in the sun delivers a simple message: Athens has resources, technical mastery, control of routes and tributes, and it can turn all of that into splendor. In a democracy, however, spending must become consent. And here the Parthenon is brilliant. The massive building site doesn't produce only a monument, it produces jobs, economic circulation, and shared pride. The city converts resources into indirect participation. Even those who don't make political decisions can feel part of the Athenian oe, because they see, touch, walk through, and celebrate that work. It's a powerful psychological mechanism. When a city's greatness becomes everyday experience, criticizing it becomes harder. Saying it's a waste doesn't sound like a technical debate, it sounds like a wound to collective identity, almost an insult to the goddess and to the memory of victory over the Persians. So the Parthenon doesn't only persuade, it makes a political order feel natural. Beauty educates. The harmony of proportions, the perfection of the Doric style, the idea of measure and control, everything transmits a public ethic, an image of Athens as a rational city destined to lead. And while it creates cohesion, it can also hide contradictions. Athenian democracy is broad for male citizens, but it excludes women, enslaved people, and medics. The monument manages to tell the story of a compact, ideal community, even when social reality is more complex. Consent often works like this: it doesn't erase tensions, it covers them with a stronger narrative. And identity, then, is literally staged inside and out. Inside stood the famous Athena Parthenos, a colossal statue made of gold and ivory over a wooden core, associated with the supervision of Phidias. It's not just an artistic masterpiece, it's civic power, embodied in the goddess. Gold doesn't only communicate wealth, it communicates security, control of resources, and the ability to mobilize precious materials and elite expertise. It's sacred, but it's also an economic and political language. Even the exterior sculpture isn't neutral decoration. The metopes and pediments show mythical clashes that, in that historical moment, speak a contemporary language: order versus chaos, civilization versus barbarism, self-control versus excess. It's an elegant way of saying, we represent the world's order, therefore our primacy is legitimate. And then there's the frieze, with its procession, often interpreted as the Panathenaic procession. Here the point becomes extremely subtle, because the sacred space isn't populated only by distant gods, but also by an idealized image of the city in motion, its roles, its social bodies, its civic choreography. Athens celebrates itself as a ritual community, and that celebration becomes emotional glue. It's not only a believing, it's belonging. The Parthenon is also soft power aimed outward. Anyone arriving in Athens sees a center capable of producing universal beauty. It's not loud propaganda, it's a cultural magnet that pushes others to recognize Athenian superiority without Athens needing to repeat it. Here, culture doesn't accompany power, it builds it. And at the same time it can intimidate. If a city can reach this level of organization, technology, and wealth, then it can also impose its will in assemblies, courts, and on the sea. That's why the Parthenon isn't famous despite politics. It's famous because it is politics done so well it feels eternal. And its meaning still lives in modern disputes. The Parthenon sculptures, often called the Elgin marbles, remain at the center of diplomatic tensions and negotiations between Greece and the British Museum, precisely because they aren't just art objects, but fragments of identity and historical legitimacy. In practice, the same mechanism continues. Whoever controls symbols controls part of the story. If you want a clean summary, the Parthenon is a visual constitution. It sacralizes politics, aestheticizes power, turns resources and alliances into shared identity, and makes consent a feeling before it becomes an idea. That's why, when you look at it today, you're not looking at only a temple, you're looking at the ultimate manual for how a city can build its image and make it outlast any army.